Okay, doing a walk around of the car. At the moment, just finishing off some extra cabling, just as a precaution. You can see I've got the hard, old, thin tyres on at the moment. Usually I run the Motorcana, I run these thin ones on the back so that I can get the back end loose. And on the front for Motorcana I run the slicks, nice and wide, and they're a little old but they're still kind of sticky. For khanacross I need a little bit more balance, so for khanacross we run these R-spec tyres, which are a treaded, slick, road legal tyre. I run 4 of those all round. We'll come around the back. You can see it's a CAMS approved roll cage. I've got the camera mount there, just there, so that's where you see most of the footage coming from. We've got the roll cage padding, which is FIA approved, and it's pretty much a standard roll cage design, nothing too special there. In the back we've got rear pulsar hubs, and we've got late model Bluebird, Nissan Bluebird calipers, just to give a little bit of extra braking force in the back there. Just some motorbike shocks. Lower control arms are pulsar, standard pulsar lower control arms. The upper control arms are custom made by myself. The sway bar is standard pulsar, so that dictates the width of the car, so it's exactly the same width as a pulsar. The batteries here, so the original batteries I went with were these lead acid AGM batteries. They're a good battery, but they just didn't do the job for what I need. So I've swapped to the lithium ion pack here that you can see. It's a 7 kilowatt pack from a Chevy or Holden Volt. It's probably about 2/3 of, a bit between half and 2/3 of what you'd get out of a Volt, not the whole pack. And they come with standard cooling, so you can see down there, in here, there's channels that run through here and then through the cells to keep them cool. All I've done is make up some flanges here to run the coolant out, and then underneath is a pump to run the coolant through, and then up through the radiator to exchange the heat with the atmosphere. And I've made up a couple of these fiberglass covers. As you can see, they sit that way over the top of the batteries. I won't put it there because I've got the clips on there at the moment. But you can see that one's on. Covering up the batteries just to make sure that fingers can't tap in there and moisture can't get in. So the brake lines there running back through the chassis. We've got the electrical system in the back here. This is where the auxiliary battery sits normally. It's not in there at the moment, but I'll show you in a sec. That's the main contactor and the one fuse, so that's the positive fuse. I run positive fuse and negative fuses down there just to be doubly sure. I know it's not absolutely necessary, but it makes me feel better. That's just a lunchbox to keep it all dry, and the lid is here, so that sits over the front there just to keep fingers and moisture out of that system. This is the auxiliary battery, so it sits in there, and then this little bracket holds it in place, and that's what powers all of the auxiliary systems like the contactor and the electrical systems up here. Now, it is a 2-seater, as you can see. It's for a couple of reasons. One is it's mainly a khanacross car, so width is a good thing, it gives you stability, and I also like taking passengers, so it gives me that ability. The passenger seat is just a pulsar passenger seat. The driver's seat is a sports bucket, non-reclinable solid seat. I think it's some epoxy material, so it's fairly light. I just put these seat covers on to keep all the dust and crap off it when it's sitting outside. There's a cable handbrake there, that's really just for parking, but I've got two hydraulic handbrakes here. They both operate exactly the same way and operate the same thing. They both operate both rear wheels, so you can choose, depending on which hand you want to use, to do a handbrake turn with either of those. The steering is all pulsar, the pedal box is all pulsar, the fire extinguisher down there, that's a CAM's requirement. You can see I've mounted the handbrakes at a slight angle. That's just to minimise the bending. You can see that one's actually still bent a little bit in. You can see that's from the pressure that it takes to pull it up. So really it probably should be angled in a little bit more to reduce that bending effect. You can see the gear shifter there. That is a standard pulsar 5-speed shifter connected to the standard 5-speed box. I shouldn't say standard because it's actually the Pulsar Q, which is an LSD version, but the LSD really does a great deal. Okay, here we can see the emergency cutoff, so that kills the system. You just whack it to deactivate it. To activate it, you turn it, so it pops out and that turns the system on. You also have to have this one on at the same time, but that's the one that kills it at a moment's notice, because you just have to go like that. Down here we have, make sure I get a good angle here, this is the launch control. So if I'm tending to spin the wheels a bit too much when I take off, I hold that before I take off, launch, and then once I've got a bit of momentum going, release it, and it gives me full power again. The dial here is the dial for the launch control. So if I want very little launch control, I'll turn it all the way up. If I want a lot of launch control, so if it's quite wet or slippery, turn it all the way down. This dial here is the overall power, so I can dial it up to 10 when I'm competing, but when I'm just pottering around the yard or putting it on the trailer, I'll put it on 3 because it's a lot easier to handle, a lot smoother and less risk of accidentally bumping the throttle and launching into a wall or something crazy. We can see the dial down here, that gives me volts and amps. It's supposed to give amp hours as well, but I don't think that works on my system for some reason. Not too worried about that though. That's of the main battery system, so that's the battery system that propels the car. Here we've got the switch for the pump, for the coolant on the batteries, so it just turns it on and off, pretty simple. This dial here is the battery voltage of the auxiliary battery. So the auxiliary battery lasts probably about a day of competition, but it gives me some warning if it seems to be running a bit low. I can swap that out. I usually take about 4 or 5 auxiliary batteries just to be sure. I'll show you under here. I made all these panels quite removable so we can get access to everything and maintain stuff. So there's the brakes. Now you can see, actually I'll take this one off as well. The panels are all very light. It's all polycarbonate, so it's usually a clear plastic. You might have heard it called Lexan before, but that's a proprietary name. The generic name is polycarbonate. It's just a type of plasticky type stuff. So it's all very light, but it's very strong. You can see I can give it a kick. It's quite strong. What I wanted to show you in here is the fact that because of the way I've set the suspension up, the brake master cylinder would normally sit here, but because of the suspension member being there, I couldn't mount it there. So I've mounted it in the middle there, and I've mounted an extra pedal box for the brake there, which operates the master cylinder. and then there's this connecting rod here that goes from the actual pedal to the master cylinder. Did have a little bit of trouble with that the first couple of events because it just wasn't strong enough, so I've reinforced it now. I've put the dome over the top to stop it from twisting, and made sure I've got some good welds in there. What else? I do run a clutch. You see the clutch pedal there. It's just the standard clutch from the Pulsar. I find it does perform better doing it that way rather than trying to not have a clutch and run it all the way up to fourth, all the way up to speed in fourth. Alright, now the front. So again, Pulsar hubs, standard Pulsar front brakes, standard Pulsar roll control arms. Top control arms are my own design. The struts are my own design too. They're just a bit of pipe with a bearing top and bottom, made to suit the mount point for the Pulsar hubs. The pushrod suspension, mainly because I didn't want to run a pushrod from the bottom here and get in the way of my drive shaft there. I have run the pushrod from the top control arm, and then I have laid the shock absorbers on the side. Gives it a little bit of cool design, and seems to work quite well. You can see here we've got the top mount heat exchanger or heat sink, and that is connected directly to the top of the bottom of the motor controller, the Curtis, as you can see there. So how that works, you can see the heatsink connected to the motor controller. I've now treated the front wheels, the front tyres, to soften up the compound before next week's event. You can see my little Formula 1 style jack there. The steering is from a MR2, Toyota MR2. Drive shafts are standard Pulsar drive shafts. The little box there is the box to protect the circuitry for the voltmeter ammeter. It's also got the shunt in there for the ammeter. And in here, open this up. Is the motor and gearbox. So you can see this is an advanced DC FC14001 9-inch brushed DC motor, and as you can see, adapter plate. I've mounted the motor on those little supports down there just to take the weight off the mount. There is a clutch in there and a very light flywheel. The gearbox, as I mentioned before, is a Pulsar Q LSD gearbox. I've put these on the side just so that if I'm continuing in the wet weather, water splashing up from the wheel is going to go into the panel rather than straight into the motor and gearbox. There might be the occasional splash or so that gets in there, but that should take care of most of the gunk off the road. I don't mind too much if rain gets in there, but I don't want road grime and gunk getting into the motor. I think that's about it.